Well, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning. I'm out here in actually Portland, Oregon, and so it's morning here. And I know some of our attendees and speakers and so forth are in different time zones. Really appreciate everybody coming today. Excited about today's presentations. I think over the last several months, really since COVID-19 really started to become a serious concern. There's been, one sector that has really been seriously affected, and that is the tourism sector. And so many people have questions about what is tourism going to look like in the future, right? So especially, when we're looking at the need to avoid large groups, such as those on buses or cruise ships or in hotels or larger hotels. And so, through discussions with others, we decided to pull together some experts in the field, and we're happy to have several experts today with us in rural tourism. That's David Visher, and I'll do a more formal invitation of David a little bit later, and also Penny Leff, who will share their knowledge, experience, and ideas today regarding kind of the future of tourism and some really specific aspects of rural tourism and agritourism. Both presenters have conducted USAID farmer-to-farmer assignments in a multitude of different countries, and so they have that both national experience and international experience to share today. After each presentation, we will have a question and answer period for the presenter. And then after both presenters have presented, we'll have more of an open forum kind of question and answer period for additional questions that you may have. So without really much further conversation, I would like to just, one last thing to remind you of. If you have questions during the presentation or after the presentation, there's a Q&A box on the screen, and please put your questions into that box, and we'll be reviewing those, and I'll share those with the presenters when the time is right. So Penny Leff is going to start us off today, and I'll provide a brief bio of Penny. So Penny Leff is originally from San Francisco, and early in her life, before she became a supporter of and an advocate for small and medium farms. Ms. Leff has more than 20 years of experience working with small and mid-scale farmers, including over 10 years working with farmers markets around California. She has been the statewide agritourism coordinator with the University of California Cooperative Extension Service since 2009. And in this position, Penny supports the development of resources and connections for farmers, ranchers, and everyone involved in the California agritourism. She maintains the UC Agritourism Directory, the calendar of events, organizes agritourism workshops, summits, webinars, and classes throughout California, and participates in research projects relating to agritourism development. She also works with producer associations and communities on developing collaborative agritourism development and marketing. Well, I want to pass it over to Penny, and thank you, Penny, for being here with us today.
Thank you, and I'm excited to be here. Let me figure out how to get this slideshow going from the beginning. There we are. Okay, I'm going to talk with you about agritourism, specifically as agritourism is a part of rural development. So what is agritourism? Well, in California, and I know there's a lot of definitions, but in California, we define agritourism as any income generating activity conducted on a working farm or ranch for the enjoyment and education of visitors. And the key here is that we're talking about, there's a few key points. income generating activities. So we're always talking about a business that farmers and ranchers are doing for their benefit to increase their income. And also we're talking about things that happen out on the farm or ranch. We're not talking about marketplaces, farmers markets, or the downtown peach festival. We're talking about activities on the farm that benefit the farmers and have visitors. And why would anybody want to go out to a farm or ranch? Well, for visitors, particularly for city people, it's kind of obvious. We love to get out of town and we want to get to the countryside and see things and do things and relax. And just getting out of town is the main point for visitors. But also they want to participate, and what they're really doing is having an activity with their family and friends. I mean, they want to meet the farmers and learn about the farms, but in particular, they're having an experience. And why would farmers or ranchers want to do agritourism? Mostly they want to do it to increase income. That's in our various surveys. It's always about adding income to the farm or ranch. But in addition, the farmers want to educate people, make sure everybody knows about agriculture, because at least in the United States, only 2% of the people are at all involved with agriculture. So it helps share what they're doing. And it also helps them promote what they're doing and promote their products. So if somebody comes out to your farm and sees your ranch and learns what you're doing, they're going to be your customer forever, and you've got a friend for life. And also it does help them to build community, have people around them, be more a part of their community. And agritourism also benefits the community itself. It helps keep the farms and ranches in business, which is important, helps, and everybody likes having a little rural land around them and a little open space so it's not all developed. Agritourism and other tourism, of course, benefits the community by getting taxes, increasing the tax base of the community, and helping other businesses in the community. There's always an economic spillover. And local people also like to have a chance to go to the farms and ranches. So you've got an additional recreation for locals. Agritourism, there's a lot of different activities that are included. Of course, we have on-farm direct sales, and that's the most popular probably, at least in California. People go out to the farms and they pick fruit, they shop at farm stands, they buy cheese, they learn how cheese is made, and of course they drink wine. In California, our most popular agritourism is wine tasting. So I know this is an international thing too, and now beer is coming in, breweries and other lots of people want to buy things. They always want to buy things. And the traditional agritourism in Europe has always been lodging, farm stays, agriturismo, staying on a farm or ranch in a B&B or camping or a cabin. That's a whole nother category. And lately we have a lot of entertainment on the farm, harvest festivals, pumpkin patches, corn mazes, putting on dinners on the farm. A lot of farmers want to put on weddings on the farm, and this is particularly profitable for the farmers because people pay big money for their weddings and private parties. So all of that is special events. And then recreation on the farm or ranch can include just picnicking, swimming, hiking. Hunting is big in a lot of places on the ranches, or fishing, taking photographs, going horseback riding. In the East Coast, you have more snow activities or going for bike rides. And another big part of agritourism is educational activities, where you're going for a class, you're going for a workshop or a tour, or maybe even a retreat, a demonstration about how farmers do something, perhaps keeping chickens or keeping bees or pruning trees. And of course, everybody likes to look at the baby animals and pet the babies in the spring, which is another popular activity. Farmers and ranchers can approach agritourism in lots of different ways. They can, excuse me, they can approach it from being full on involved in it, being the primary enterprise, like a winery where they're growing grapes, but all their business is retail through their tasting room, and maybe they have lodging. Or they can do it kind of half and half. For instance, a fruit grower who has part of their orchard as a U-pick operation and the other half they sell wholesale. Or it can be just a little part of their business. For instance, maybe they occasionally have tours or school groups coming where it's not a major part, but something they do on the side. Now, agritourism is not automatic for farmers and ranchers. It's a whole new business. Basically, when they're getting into visitor serving activities, they are entering the hospitality industry and the tourism industry, which is a whole lot different than the agricultural production industry, which means that they don't automatically have the skills to be all of a sudden a host to people who have expectations of what a host is supposed to be. So they have to learn hospitality skills and teach hospitality to their to all their staff, and sometimes they have to hire different staff. It's not always the same people that work on the farm that are good at hosting guests. There's always new regulations of everybody has permits and rules and building codes, and farmers and ranchers have to learn these when they're getting into agritourism. They're taking on new liability. There's risks of people getting hurt. They need different insurance. They need to make sure guests are staying in the appropriate area that they're supposed to. Sometimes they have to limit things, put up signs, and get extra insurance, and keep everything safe. They usually need to work with different people than they're working. As a farmer and rancher in production, they've got suppliers, they've got customers, and they've got partners, they've got ag associations. If they get into tourism, their new partners are the visitor bureaus, the tourism associations, probably the hospitality associations, the lodgings, and all sorts of new people they'll be working with. And agritourism depends on community support. It's a whole community. It's not something that a farmer or rancher does on their own. It's something that usually they do together. And this is where farmer to farmer and destination marketing organizations and all kinds of community organizations can be very helpful to farmers in developing their agritourism. Of course, it has to start with the inspiration from the farmers, where they've got to be into this. They've got to think of what they have that they want to, what they want to show to their visitors. And a good way to think of it for developing an agritourism attraction is, what do you have to see? What can people learn? And they always want to eat or drink or do something. So they're not just going to come out there and see, they want something a little more, and they always want something to buy. It's like if they're going out and visiting the farm, they've got to bring something home for the people who didn't get that experience. So shopping is a big part of it, and farmers should always have something to sell to their guests. So the destination marketing people or the community organization is essential. They can help in a lot of ways. They can help by training farmers in coming into this new business and this new enterprise and this new industry. A lot of times they can help with specific things like helping farmers plan their business and just figure out how the money's going to work, how everything is going to work in the business. They can help with helping the farmers set up to manage their risk, get insurance, keep everything safe and healthy, and particularly in COVID-19 times, there's extra special protections that farmers will have to set up to keep their guests safe and their families safe. And they do need to learn how to be good to their guests, how to take care of their guests, and appropriate skills in customer service. The destination people, the marketing people, can also help the farmers in organizing together, in building their farmer network, and in identifying who's going to work with them, because there's always new partners. It could be the Lodging Association. In some places, it's going to be the Adventure Tourism Association. It could be art associations, culture. Whoever is currently seeing visitors are going to be the new partners of the farmers and ranchers doing agritourism. And the destination people, the partners, can help the farmers develop an itinerary, and that includes all these other tourism destinations. And sometimes, sometimes you need to work on the infrastructure. Sometimes you need to help develop the roads and the signs and the buses and whatever it takes to get people out to the farm. So the next thing to do when the agritourism group is ready to join the tourism community, they need to start thinking about how to get those visitors to the farmer ranch, and how agritourism is going to fit in with what the visitors are doing now, and who is going to be there, who's going to be the tour guide connection, who's going to be the person where the visitors are now that's going to help direct them to the agritourism trip, itinerary, farm, whatever's going on, region. And in California, we have a lot of grower-based associations where the farmers have organized themselves, and regional associations are really big. It's very important to market the region. It doesn't work for just one farmer to say, hey, come visit me. It generally works better for it to be a group of farmers or ranchers or an agricultural association working together and then connecting with the tourism community and the hospitality community wherever they are. And this is basically the job of community organizations and experts and visitors and the tourism bureaus and farmer to farmer people and everybody else that's working with the farmers. You guys are important, and it can really help develop agritourism wherever you are. So that's what I have to say. Thank you very much, and I'd love to hear any questions. And now I'm going to stop sharing the screen there.
Right. Well, thank you, Penny. That was great. Very informative. I personally have a couple questions because I find this topic extremely interesting and exciting. You know, because I worked in agriculture for ACDI VOCA for nearly, I guess, 18, 19 years now, and tourism and building tourism opportunities at farm level is one of the things that we've focused on over the years. And one thing that came up, I've been reading a little bit about some of the California tourism opportunities, and one kind of area that I hadn't heard of is glamping. Do you have any you share a little bit more information about what glamping is?
Glamping is where the farmer will set up probably several like cabin tents or like a temporary structure, a yurt or a tent cabin that's not a fully built structure that needs to be to building codes. It's easier, and they'll provide the full hospitality experience. They'll provide meals, they'll usually take people on a tour, give them an experience. So it's just it's rather than putting them up in a building, it's just putting them up more in a tent or a easier activity, but still providing them with the meals and experience.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I mean, I guess that it maybe involves a little bit less maybe upfront investment, so there's some opportunity there to get engaged. During your presentation, you also mentioned obviously wine tasting as one of the premier or most popular activities, but you also mentioned educational kind of opportunities and schools, and so I was curious if you could talk a little bit more about how you get engage with the school systems or schools, and what are some of the kind of issues the farmers or those providers have to deal with when bringing school-age children or those types of people onto their farm.
School tours are very popular. Usually the school will send teachers and volunteers and chaperones. So it's not actually as difficult for the farmer to do a school tour. They have to usually, at least in California, to get kids out to the farm, they have to understand the educational curriculum, where they have to connect it to something that the children are learning. So they have to teach them about plants, the parts of a plant, or they have to teach them about animals and how animals grow, or there's usually some curriculum that's required. The schools usually provide the insurance and the buses, and often the PTA or the school will raise the funds to bring the kids out. It's not real profitable, but for some it is. And usually they'll charge $5 or $10 per child, and it helps. And they have a tour, and they walk around, and the children go home with a little pumpkin or something, and they're excited about that.
Yeah. No, I think one of the one issue that we face is getting younger people involved in agriculture, and that's a challenge worldwide, and so getting more youth, and I think that education, getting younger people there on the farm and getting a better understanding early on in their life is critical. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Penny. Gonna move on to David's presentation now. David Visher, and so I'm going to provide a brief introduction and overview of his experience. So David started in 1984 working in agriculture and rural tourism. He has built a specialty produce distribution company, farmed 60 acres of specialty crops, and worked with the University of California Cooperative Extension and Small Farm Program, where he worked with farmers and institutions to help small-scale producers prosper through good business planning and marketing. And after his work at the university, he started a consulting company focused on creating educational opportunities for farmers and ranchers, and rolled out a new third-party sustainable certification in California. He returned to the University of California Sustainable Agricultural Program to develop a values-based supply chain initiative, and then he retired from UC Davis in 2014. And during that time, he started really in around 2002, he began consulting or conducting farm-to-farmer assignments, and has, in multiple countries. And to date, he's actually conducted over 13 assignments in places like Ukraine, Haiti, Malawi, Mozambique, Egypt, Nepal, Madagascar, and most recently in Armenia and Georgia. And so he's going to touch on a little bit of that experience there. Throughout his work and travels, he has focused on creating value for farmers and rural households, and tourism has been an important aspect of this. It's great to have you here with us today, David. Really look forward to hearing your knowledge and experiences. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Thelonious, for that introduction. That was great. It's daunting to hear my long history. I don't remember the beginning of it. But I really appreciate this opportunity to speak to ACDI VOCA folk and other implementers for the Farmer to Farmer program, and it's a new experience for me to be doing my work over the airwaves like this. So I hope everyone will forgive me for my wandering eyes and what have you as I look at notes. Before I really get started, I really want to acknowledge two women who made it possible for me to really be here and to understand what I know about nature tourism, agritourism, ecotourism, and community-based or sustainable community-based tourism. And those are the two country directors for Armenia and for Georgia, where I served in that capacity. In Armenia, Makrita Avijan, you guys have to forgive me on your last names. Makrita Avijan is the country director for Armenia, and she is joining us today. And I hope that if the questions are addressed to her, she has a chance to answer. And also Magda Minabde from Georgia. I also massacred your last name, but she's here and in the same role as Makrita, country director. I think you're also responsible for other countries in your region, and I hope you have a chance to answer questions as well that are addressed directly to you. I have examples from both Georgia and Armenia to talk about. So Penny's done a great job at outlining how rural tourism and agritourism look in the United States. And the principles that she talked about really apply everywhere. And so I'll try not to repeat too much of what she said. But I'd like to know I'd like to talk about what rural tourism looks like in the countries where ACDI, VOCA, and other farmer-to-farmer implementers look like. I'd like to see how they operate in these countries. So who are the big players in your countries, and what are their roles? And what is the farmer-to-farmer's operating niche in this very crowded space? There are many other people operating there. So the big sectors are the NGOs, who are already operating there. Often they're from the EU somehow, and they're very sophisticated in place and have been operating for some time working on tourism issues. And there's a challenge to find the thing that they're not doing very well and to help offer to assist them in that area. And in the arena of farmer to farmer, that is our very strong ability to offer extremely specific, targeted, and focused assistance with the volunteer consultants. The next, of course, are the destination management organizations, the DMOs. And these are travel companies and tour aggregators and regional marketing programs, industry associations, and the like. And these groups could either be a host for farmer to farmer, or they can direct us to individual entrepreneurs to be the clients. So they're a great resource for those two reasons. Often the destination management organizations don't have very good capacity to conduct individual trainings or training sessions for the entrepreneurs, and so that's an opportunity for farmer to farmer. And finally, of course, the government, the ministries and the local, regional governments, local governments. The government often contracts with NGOs or private organizations to develop their and implement, in some cases, their strategic plan for nature tourism in the country. So you can find yourself working both with the government and with these NGOs. They have much more sophistication about this space, but and often the government people don't really get it. So you have an education job to do with the people from the governments. That's They often don't really understand what nature tourism is. Certainly agritourism, the idea of going back to the farm for a vacation seems alien to a lot of those bureaucrats, and they don't really understand the motivation, and so that makes it a challenge to get them excited about promoting this form of tourism. So, but all of these organizations have a role to create the infrastructure that these agricultural entrepreneurs need in order to really succeed. The infrastructure that leverages their capacity to be successful. If there's no good road to get to the region where you're going to have your resort and your community, active community, if that infrastructure isn't there, you're going to have a hard time making it. If there isn't a bus system that can bring tourists out from the capital and out to the countryside, it's difficult. If there isn't an international marketing program that your government is supporting and promoting, it's difficult. If there isn't an inventory of the experiences that tourists can have in the country, then you can't access the marketing very well either. So those infrastructure requirements are the responsibility to a large degree of these big sectors that I've just been discussing. So Penny brought this up well and made a good case for the importance of communities, sustainable community development to this industry, this space. It's rare and very difficult for an individual out in the countryside, an individual entrepreneur running a farm or running a resort or running a backpacking tour business or something like that, all by themselves to make an impact, to succeed. It really takes all the people in the community working together to create enough activities to draw the tourists. Nobody wants to come out and do one thing. They want to come out to a village and do several different things. So it does take the community working together to pull it off, but it always comes down to an individual working in that community. There's always somebody who is the charismatic leader. There's someone who has the fire in their belly to make this thing go, and they spark the activity and the development of that community as a destination. And that charismatic individual can take several different forms, and I'll be talking to you about that in a minute. So I think I'm going to move to some photographs if I can make this work. Thelonious, nod if you see this. You see a picture of me up on the screen? Is that working?
Not quite yet.
Yeah, okay. Let me try.
Okay.
How's that?
There, very. Yep,
okay.
There it is.
All right.
Beautiful picture.
Well, that's actually just a staging picture. And now I've forgotten how to, anyway, there we go. So, didn't do it. So I want to use an example of a village that I visited in Georgia that is a beautiful case of the whole town acting together to recreate themselves as a destination. And this is Musava village on the foothills on the way to on the big mountains in Georgia, on the way to a very well-developed rural destination. This village was, but the person who's the charismatic leader in that village, the person who really had the idea to bring them together, was a hometown girl, a woman who grew up there in that village and then moved away to a nearby city to start an ag input supply company and a veterinarian clinic, and she's been quite successful. Her name is Mia Mekava, and Mia has done a really wonderful job of going back to her town and getting everybody excited about what it is that they can do in their beautiful place and how they can package their resources in a way that will draw tourists to their community to spend money and to strengthen the development of the community. One of her goals, a very important goal, is that they create employment opportunities so that the youth in the village have a reason to stay there when they graduate from school. And so they're trying to create opportunities for the youth to stay and earn money in serving the tourist business. So the place is gorgeous. It's got all the things that you want: a rural character, beautiful natural environment, clean, and absolutely unspoiled. There's a river there that has a species of trout in it that is only, you can only find there in that one stream in this whole area. They claim that it's the only place where this trout appears, although I doubt that. But there's walking trails, camping along this stream. They also have guest houses. These are the trout. They fed it. We talked about the trout. Someone went out and caught 3 of them and fed it to us for dinner. They have beautiful guest houses that they're building. They have a tradition of doing woodworking in the community. But the thing that really excited me, maybe this is my own predisposition, but it's the food. Mia put together a fantastic feast for me and the people I was traveling with. That just really blew my socks off. Everything in this feast had been raised within about 3 miles of where we were eating, out in the garden of one of the nascent guest houses. This is a traditional cheese dish, I believe, and there's the meal they put on. Can you imagine how, if tourists understood that this is what they might be encountering if they came to this village, how there'd be a draw to come and eat like this? It was really an amazing resource. So she has managed to excite all the people in that community that need to be excited to make this idea work. Another place we went to I went to in Armenia has a somewhat different approach to building out this community, a community that would welcome tourists. So this is Greek House Eco Park or Eco Resort, and this is founded by this young man and his family. They have built this wonderful little and fairly luxurious resort with a marvelous dining hall, and their position, their branding is to offer a very clean, organic, locally sourced, local food place for people to come rest and recover health from their health after being in the city. But in order for this to work, they need to be able to source product from the farmers and the villagers surrounding the resort. And so they are encouraging the development of these greenhouses, mushroom cultivation, tomatoes here, and also encouraging other enterprises around the resort, like horseback riding or tours into the mountains where people can do wild harvesting, and to visit the park, the Dendro Park it's called, which is only 20 kilometers or so away. This is a famous place of curing that people have been going to since Stalinist days, to breathe in the pollens produced by the fir trees during the seasons when the trees are pollinating, and apparently this is good for the lungs and good for their respiratory system. So it's a sort of a sanitarium. And so what's unique about this community is that it's being driven by an anchor tenant, basically, an anchor enterprise, in this case the resort, And that is that young man that we showed you the back of is the person whom the fire comes from, and he's sort of driving the process forward and getting the rest of the community excited and getting the government excited and other NGOs excited about supporting him. But it's coming from the idea of an anchor enterprise. That's just another beautiful shot of it. So let me go back one. Farmer to Farmer is really uniquely suited to serving these kinds of communities, because you can see that there's a lot of very specific kinds of skills that that they need in order to be successful. And that's exactly what Farmer to Farmer is very good at doing. So if there's a tasting room that needs to be built, that we can provide, or a tasting room that a winery may want to use to build a brand image, we can provide a very specific volunteer who can do that kind of work. If the community like Muzhava village needs to have assistance with a strategic plan and a work plan that will bring all the parties together around a common mission, and they know what to do and when to do it and why they're doing it and when they're going to do it next, then you could bring in a farmer-to-farmer consultant who can really help them through that process of developing their own strategic plan. These are things that the existing NGOs don't have the particular resources to do. Yeah.
Yeah, those are some great examples there, David.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of questions coming in, and so we really want to kind of give the opportunity for both you and Penny to respond to a couple of these questions. I see that Penny has responded to some of those in the chat box and the Q&A box. But one that's also come up, and I know you're touching on this right now, David, but there's a question regarding examples from outside kind of the more developed world, and so I know you shared the example from Georgia, and I know there's examples in Armenia and so forth. And just maybe you could just touch on some of those other examples. So, it looks like you've traveled in different areas as well, but and so I think they're interested in and how you can in some of these more developed areas, how you can get people interested in agritourism or rural tourism. But then also there's lots of questions coming in regarding COVID-19, and so I don't want to neglect that, because that is one of the focuses here. And so we want to, there's a lot of concern about people that have gotten into agritourism, how do they respond now, and what can they do now, and to really kind of keep that rolling. And then also those that want to get into it, I think what we talked about the other day was that there's an opportunity here, because there's a period where people could be investing now, so that they could, when the restrictions, travel restrictions and so forth are reduced, those things are in place, and then they can start to promote. But yeah, there's a series of questions coming in, and one other point that I just wanted to touch on briefly that I know both you and Penny kind of talked about is the need for collaboration. There's these associations, groups, and that seems to be critical to market and to bring people together to create a kind of a economy of scale as in terms of services and opportunities in the area. And then you've talked a lot, David, about identifying that champion, that person with the fire in the belly in there, that mentor that really can push the opportunities forward. So maybe briefly you could just talk about some of the other opportunities or other places that you've had the opportunity to kind of help develop tourism. And then let's get into some of the concerns regarding COVID-19 and kind of the way forward.
Well, maybe Penny should talk about what some the ways that she's developed some of maybe the regional marketing programs or something like that in California.
Well, first I'd like to, if it's possible, talk about when I did go in the farmer to farmer group and work with banana cooperative in the Dominican Republic, and they were having a really hard time because of hurricanes, but they had the one farmer who was very interested, who had already developed her farm. Her name was Maria, and I don't know how she's doing now and how that group is doing, but they had developed already an itinerary with their banana grower association, going out to the different farms, visiting the packing house, which was in the region, and learning about packing, and going to Maria's farm and having a dinner where she set up a little shop where people could buy local crafts. And it was all how you'd expect a successful thing to do, but they needed to pull the tourists from a couple of hours away, which was the destination, the all-inclusive tourism places where the tourists were hanging out on the beach, and they needed to pull them over to their region, and it took the connection with the hospitality group, with the hotel association in the community of the farms to be able to do this. So they started cooperating with the hotel association to provide the lodging and to contribute to the itinerary with some other activities in the town, visiting a museum and another activity, ecological activity going on. So that was what they did, and they needed to connect then with the appropriate tourism referral from the all-inclusive resorts. So they needed the connection with the person there that had an incentive. So of course they needed a piece of the action in order to send tourists, in order to book them to go on the banana tour. So it was interesting to see how they were working on it. And again, they had a lot of hurricanes, and I'm not sure how it finally developed there.
No.
And I recently, in February, I returned from an assignment in Liberia, and I was going there with a different implementer. I believe it's Winrock. I get you guys confused sometimes, but it turns out that the people I was working with most of the time during my whole visit was ACDI VOCA, who was operating in Liberia around these community forests, which is a mechanism to preserve sustainably the wild forest land, beautiful forest land in eastern Liberia. And so if the communities can gather together with other communities surrounding the forest and create a special plan for managing the forest, then they can get permission from the government to really have control of it. But in order for that to be successful, so that the logging companies don't come in, they need to develop new enterprises. So I was there working with leaders from all of these surrounding communities in how to do a strategic plan and get started with business plans for the different enterprises that they were contemplating doing. And one of the towns, one of the villages, were wanting to create an eco resort inside the forest, which would be carefully managed by the people who are trained in this community or the forest plan, and how to take care of it ecologically, and then to try to draw investors and others into the and other experts into this project to build out a resort. So your guys, Glenn Lyons, was the person who I was working with there. So so that's an example of how communities can work together in other countries who are much less developed than, say, Armenia and Georgia.
Yeah, speaking of Armenia and Georgia, I know we have Makrita on the line as well, and maybe she could just briefly talk about some of the activities there, and then we can and maybe try to tie it a little bit to maybe how Armenia is responding to COVID-19 too, or some of the thoughts you may have on that, Makrita.
Well, thank you. Thank you for, glad to see you all here, and thank you for I'm glad to be here as part of this. And to be brief, rural tourism is something that is not largely developed it's not developed on a larger scale in Armenia yet, and it's like on the self-initiative of a farmer or a rural person who understands what tourism is and wants to be part of it. But with this COVID situation, as you mentioned, it just jumped to it straight. When the outside travel is mostly banned and there is not going to have much international travel to Armenia or from Armenia, the Armenians will have to revise their traveling habits. And where to go when you don't want to spend your vacation just in a holiday home with hundreds of other people being at the same place. It's to go to the nature somehow. And the nature, the rural tourism has all the opportunities now, the bed and breakfasts and the guest houses and the village houses that provide a variety of like orchard opportunities, like for the children to go out and pick up their fruits, or just spending a couple of days in a remote village with more or less appropriate conditions, housing conditions, but at the same time, as Penny mentioned, supplementary and complementary activities is going to develop fast, most probably. And my hope is that eventually all this situation will bring to the faster development of the rural tourism in Armenia, and Farmer to Farmer Armenia is a very active promoter of the development of this branch of tourism. So I hope that we will be there for these years, and we already have Simon's plans to help the local communities to develop their rural tourism activities or the strategies. So this is to be brief on that. I can talk on, but I know that.
You know.
Yeah, no, I obviously, I mean, I think there's obvious, you know, a lot of concern about where we are right now with COVID-19 and you know, those that have invested in tourism, in agritourism on their farms and what they're doing now. And, you know, I think, you know, over the next 12 to 18 months, you know, I think there is an opportunity to really start to, you know, you can look at, you know, do that inventory that David was talking about, like identify what you have to offer and really come up with a business plan, a strategy, a marketing strategy to kind of push that forward. But thinking, you know, further ahead, you know, thinking about opportunities to bring people in 6, 8, 10 months down the road and starting to invest now. But I don't know, Penny or David, do you have something more to kind of offer to that as in terms of how to kind of manage the current situation if you're currently an implementer of agritourism or rural tourism? And then also if you want to get into it, you know, is this a good time to try to get into it? Thinking about, you know, the opportunities, really what Makrita was talking about, the kind of the desire for many tourists not to be around large crowds, et cetera, and in smaller group kind of based tourism.
I can answer some of that. Okay, I'm not muted. You can hear me. I think that people are really interested in, particularly local people, are interested in close to home activities right now. So it might be that you're reaching out to within your own country, to the people in local cities close by and bringing them out to the countryside, because there's interest. People don't want to do a lot of international travel right now, but they do want to get out in small groups and do things that they can outside. And outside, we've learned, is a little safer than being inside in large groups. And so people do like to go out and pick fruit and shop and do things that they can do in small groups, small visits. So I'd encourage people to do that, but also that there is people are now, since they got scared there was going to be a food shortage, they've started looking around and seeing that there's local farms, and they've started getting a little more interested in their food system. And so I think there's going to be an interest in visiting farms, and that this will continue. And because things take a long time to plan, it would be a good time for people to start planning larger agritourism associations, groups, itineraries, so they're ready when the people are ready to come back.
I have something that I've noticed is that there is a boom in the rural or whole house rentals and whole house rentals out in the country, out in the countryside. And so that's something that everybody working in this space can prepare for. Another issue in places that are less developed, as I just figured out how to hang up on that person. And places that are less developed in their tourism industry is to deal with the concern of all of the tourists now for cleanliness protocols. They want to be reassured in all of the marketing material that they can see, whether it's from the destination management organization or from an online booking service or from Vrbo or Airbnb, or even if it's the hotels. They want to see that the host has some training in how to do the how to distance themselves, how to stay clean, how to wipe down surfaces, how to clean the sheets. I mean, all of that they need to be reassured that it's going to be safe to travel to these places.
Yeah, no,
and that's something that people can get to work on right away. It isn't very expensive.
Yeah, no, I think that's a critical point, is making sure that people feel safe to go to wherever the opportunities lie. And so regardless if it's a farm in an open space, it needs to, people need to be reassured that it's safe to go there, and so forth. And so there's a whole series of questions that have come in, and things like, I think everybody kind of reserved their questions to the bitter end. And so though we're kind of running out of time here, and though if you, David, or Makrita, or Penny, if you could look at those questions on the side and maybe just respond to those comments and questions just in written form, that way the attendees can get a response, and they'll kind of have some ideas of where they can go from here or how to manage that. And just lastly, I think I think there's a lot of interest in agritourism, rural tourism, lots of concerns where we are right now. But as I mentioned earlier, it does seem to me that it's maybe an opportunity right now to really start to think about, to plan, to do that inventory on your farm and ask some of those questions. Could this be an opportunity for our farm or our business? And so I don't know if either of you have any resources or other information that you could potentially share with the attendees via the chat box through links or something else. But that would be great if you could do that. Share any relevant kind of informational links that would help someone get started or at least evaluate the opportunities that related to agritourism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where do we share those links?
You can just put it into the question and answer box there. Okay. On the screen here, and then also, yeah, like I mentioned, if you could also try to respond to some of those questions there, that would be great. And then we'll make this video available at the through different channels. Both ACDI VOCA and then the Farm to Farmer broader network, and so I know there's lots of questions out here, though I think other people may have other activities that they need to get to, and so I think we'll leave it at that for now. And I think that a lot of great information was shared. And I really thank both you, David, and Penny for your information and knowledge, and I definitely encourage everybody who's on the line to tap into your local communities, support agritourism, rural tourism, support your local farmers, you know, and particularly this time. And as Penny mentioned, I think a lot of people are, you know, one of the strategies is really to maybe look locally currently and support those activities in locally, and then you know, start to strategize and plan for the future when things hopefully go back to normal.
There's no normal anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But,
thank you very much. It's been great to be here.
Yeah,
thank you very much for letting us be part of this. I really appreciate it. And thank you everybody for what you're doing in the world with the farmers.
Yeah, and absolutely. And thank you, Makrita, for your clarifying the things about Armenia that I didn't get to.
You are most welcome. Thank you for being here. And if I may, there are very interesting questions, informative actually questions, the answers to which would be even more informative on the question and answer. And I think these are the questions where Penny and David have the most experience to respond, because I'm also interested in the responses to those questions that we have in Q&A session.
Yeah, so I think what we'll do is we'll make sure that we get responses to these questions, and then we'll publish them as well. We'll send them out to those that have participated.
Great.
They'll be in the chat box here too. All right. Well, thank you so much for all of your time and energy and thoughts. It was very informative and useful. And one other last thing, Penny, I think it'd be great if you could share your presentation too. I think several people asked about that. As well.
I will share that with you, Thelonious, and then will you share it with everybody?
Yes.
I have to make it into a PDF and then share it with you.
Okay, perfect. Great. All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all. It's been great. Really appreciate all your energy. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.